Taoiseach, my question relates to the promised redress scheme. There's a different name on it. There isn't a sign of it. And I ask this question in the context of a finite group of people who are waiting patiently for the government's action. Notwithstanding their courage and fortitude, former residents of mother and baby homes are becoming more anxious, more worried and vulnerable with each passing day, not to mention angry. The government has a duty to act expeditiously, and particularly given the background and the delay to date. On the 19th of January this year, Minister O'Gorman said the scheme would be drawn up by the end of April. An explanation then was given for the delay that there were many submissions. Again in July, we were told that the interdepartmental group had effectively completed their work. Still no sign of the report. Then we were told it would be in the early part of the new term. We're now into the middle of the new term and there isn't a sign of the report. I'm asking you to tell me when the redress scheme will be published and accessible to those who are waiting, Iverahane. Number two, what communication have you had with the religious orders in relation to their participation in the amount of money needed to fund the scheme? And in relation to Tuam, we have seen the report on television on Sunday night, to be published tonight on RTE in relation to Tuam, which is intimately connected with this question. More than 4 years ago, an expert team went in and looked at it in response to the Commission investigation, who had a press release saying there were substantial remains, human remains there. The expert team went in. They are quoted in the documentary as saying, I never in my life walked away from a site like this with human remains before. Their work was a scoping exercise to see what was there. They temporarily protected the site for 6 months and nothing has happened 4 years later. And we're sitting here today, Minister, after a series of mistakes, delays, a report from the Commission that was in your offices from October last year, only a report published in January this year and never given to the former residents till after, and so on, and a whole list of other delays, obfuscations, and not to mention tapes and a press release saying they had been destroyed and subsequently not. Given that background, and I'm over time and I'm very conscious of it, it is extremely important that the Taoiseach give us a date today so that we can have confidence and hope.
The committee published its report on the legislation in July. The Minister is now carefully considering the recommendations from that process. His intention is to publish the bill following that consultation by the end of the current parliamentary session, bring it through the legislative process as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Taoiseach, and I welcome the fact that you're talking about in the next few weeks, but I've heard that since January, so forgive my reluctance to believe that, number one. Number two, in relation to the scheme, we've had an ample amount of time to learn from previous schemes. The redress institutional scheme, remember we created an offence there that if somebody disclosed what they got, they committed a criminal offence. That's what we did with that redress scheme. Then we set up the Magdalene scheme, and then the Ombudsman told us it was maladministered or maladministration. And then we set up Caranua, and it was an insult to the Irish language because we talked about a new friend when it was the old enemy in disguise. And still we go on perpetuating the abuse, the delay, the obfuscation. So, Minister Taoiseach, I want an exact date on when the redress scheme will be published. I want you to answer me in relation to Tuam. The archaeologists, the specialist forensic archaeologists said they walked away from that. They didn't walk away, but they protected it just for 6 months. 4 years later, that site is not protected. We know from Catherine Connolly's sterling work that 796 death certs are there. We don't know if that amount of children and babies are buried there. We just don't need to excavate the whole site to rebury them, which is extremely important. We need to excavate to examine. It is time that we grew up in this country and analysed and examined what happened so we can look from it and learn from it.